And I think we'll make a start and participants will join us as they come in. Hello, everyone. My name is Rita Chincotta, and together with George Liberopoulos, co-founder of the Business Partnering Impact Program, we're really pleased and happy to welcome you today to our webinar, The Evolution of Business Partnering. Today's panel discussion focuses on the evolution of business partnering, as the name suggests, and the topic has prominent importance now, and probably more so than what it ever has, given what we're dealing with: increased business disruption and certainly market uncertainties. There are heightened expectations right now on business partners, and I know that we're all experiencing significant challenges as we work through issues that we've never ever had to face before. In our time today, we will be discussing the evolution of the business partner role, how it's delivering business value today, and the expectations of the role in the future. And with that, we're very, very pleased to welcome our esteemed panel. The group brings strong diversity of thought on this topic, along with experience across a range of industries and business disciplines. We have a global audience on our webinar today, with registrations from around Australia, New York, New Zealand, Philippines, the UK and South Africa. So welcome to you all, and thank you very much for joining us. I encourage you to participate in the chat functionality that's offered via Zoom through the chat function, and we'll be picking up your comments as we go and certainly directing them towards the panelists and also at the end of the session in a short Q&A if we have time, hopefully, to do that. But now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panel. Lisa Calderon is the Group Manager of People and Culture at Kogan and brings expertise gained in pharmaceuticals, utilities and retail, having led HR teams at Swiss Wellness, Energy Australia and Coles. Lisa is a commercially savvy and outcome-focused HR leader who brings pragmatism and commercial insights to her work. Thank you for joining us, Lisa.
Thanks, Rita.
Alex King would be familiar to many of you as a senior recruiter from HR Partners based here in Melbourne. Alex's background was in supply chain, logistics and sales before making the move into HR. Alex brings a commercial and talent focus to our discussion today. Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Thank you, Rita.
Kate Pleece is the Head of Business Partnering at RACV, and with experience working across small, medium and large global enterprises, Kate brings a diverse set of experience and deep business partner insights, gained in many sectors including professional services, manufacturing, oil and gas and mining services. Welcome, Kate. Jordan Papadopoulos is the Head of Sales and Marketing and an IT business partner at Milan Industries. From business owner in financial services through to a career in IT, Jordan's been able to bring together both of these technical areas of expertise and leverages these to partner with his clients. Welcome, Jordan.
Thanks, Rita.
Your hosts today are George Liberopoulos and myself, Rita Chincotta, and we're the co-founders of the Business Partnering Impact Program. And now we'll move on to our questions. So the first question, Kate, is for you. You lead a team of business partners at RACV. What's been the biggest change in the role of the business partner in the last few months? And is there anything that you've seen that you think is fundamentally going to change the business partner role moving forward?
Well, I think first of all, it's fair to say that this is the event none of us have trained for. But regardless of the discipline, whether you're a HR, IT or finance business partner, my view is that the key ingredients of what makes successful business partnering hasn't changed. It's just the situation that we're in at the moment with COVID. We're using those skills in a different way. So for me, the core skills are about listening, helping your business area to succeed, making them feel like the things that matter to you, to them matter to you, and delivering those solutions. You know, what I can see that I think we've got an opportunity, of course, about listening opportunity to look at is ways of working. So looking at what's worked for our organisations pre-COVID and where are we getting strengths and wins at the moment, and how can we then bring that forward for the future? Because I think it would be a real lost opportunity if we simply went back to the way things were. Over the last few months, I think like a lot of people, it's expecting the unexpected, and that's the new normal now. And I think that's going to be here to stay for at least the next year. And I don't see the role of the BP is essentially changing, but there's certainly a heightened focus on a few key areas. And for me, I sustainability. So particularly in areas that have been impacted, cost modelling, looking at workforce compositions, cost structures, capability, and what we need to do to support businesses to stay financially resilient. Business partners have always been the people connectors, I think, and the glue that connects the people and culture team and the conduit to the business. And at the moment, when we're probably as professionals deploying a lot of solutions at pace and at scale, being that connector across your own function and across multiple functions has never been so important. But from a human perspective, I think for me, it's just these changes that are happening, and some people's businesses are more impacted than others. But it's about staying connected to the fact that we're all human beings, and where change is happening and there's impacts, that these are happening to our colleagues, people in our team, and understanding that we might be doing some really difficult things, but I think the way we do it absolutely matters, and keeping the employee experience as part of a core part of your values. I think for our team, we're lucky we're part of a purpose-driven organisation, and that really drives our values. But for me, one of the most basic things that I think about is if we're having to do things that might be really difficult, how would I want that to be done if it was someone I loved that this was happening to? If it was my husband or my sister. And I think keeping that human connection element is really critical.
Thanks, Kate. And apologies, there were a few little glitches there on the audio, so just bear with us as we work on that. But hopefully you're able to capture the essence of what Kate was saying there. Thank you, Kate. So again, if you've got comments that you'd like to make through the chat or the Q&A function, please put those in, and we're monitoring those as we go through, and we'll move to those also. Jordan, what new skills or competencies have you needed to develop over the last 12 months to ensure that you're optimising your value as a leader and a business partner?
It's a good question. Look, definitely over the last few months, there's been a number of skills, but over the last 12 months, I would say, for me, my role has been critical in terms of overseeing a range of areas in the business, from sales, marketing, and people and culture. So I've had to be really robust with my time management to ensure we're able to deliver on our business model. So what's been really important for me has been also focusing on my personal development, and especially around that commercial acumen piece. So constantly being aware of factors that are impacting our clients and the role that we can play in that. So from developing our business model, the client segments that we work with and how we connect with them, this has definitely changed over the last few months, especially with everything happening. Our value proposition and what are the political factors, economic, technology is obviously continuously changing, but law, all the different factors that are impacting the businesses and clients we deal with. So, for example, the data protection laws that have come in, the cybersecurity essential 8 that's been introduced. So there's a number of different factors that we've had to focus on. So developing, my commercial acumen and then feeding that through to the team has been really critical around how we deliver value to our partners. So I think that's definitely allowed us to add a lot more value to the clients over the past, especially 6 months, I would say. So that's probably been the biggest thing for me, just around being robust with that time management and developing commercial acumen.
And I think that commercial acumen piece that you touch on there, Jordan, we know that that's a key and significant part of a business partner's role, but perhaps it's never been tested more so than what it is now, particularly for practitioners across all disciplines, marketing, HR, finance, IT, procurement, whatever the discipline is. The research that we're undertaking, and also in talking to a lot of business partners, suggests that we're having to get across a broad range of issues, more so perhaps than what we ever have. So absolutely critical in terms of that commercial acumen piece. Thank you. So Lisa, unlike so many distressed industries, Kogan has been fortunate and has experienced significant positive change over the last few months. You've had a significant share price and revenue growth, and also activity in the acquisition space. So interesting and busy times, no doubt, at Kogan. How have HR, IT, marketing and procurement been called upon to demonstrate their value during this time, and what behaviours have made them stand out?
Sure. And look, thanks, Rita, for the opportunity to be on the panel and for having us, and also hi to everyone who's joined us today. So I think, as you've touched on, I mean, it's a time of massive disruption for everyone during this pandemic. And I think no matter what industry you're in, the role of a BP is as important and central as ever. So I think for us, fortunately, you know, we're a startup business from 14 years back that started in a suburban garage here in Melbourne. So the business and all of our systems were actually set up to be done remotely in a work from home manner. So for us as business partners, that was a key element for us to be able to pivot quickly and allow our business to shift focus into the business operations side, where we understand that a lot of businesses, you know, weren't as fortunate as us in that sense, and were having to deal with that transition to a remote work setting for the beginning. So I think in that sense, our business partners were able to really gain hold with our stakeholders around what is it now that we need to be able to deliver in order to ensure that resilience remain in place. And I think another area was really looking at analysing and understanding the changes that were happening within our departments and what our client groups were experiencing. So a key thing there is just reviewing the ways we interacted with our stakeholders, ensuring that everything we deliver is remaining relevant in the changing environment that we operated in. So I think that was a key element, and just looking at our ways of working, as Kate touched on earlier. So I think for us, the key elements of resilience in order to help our teams navigate through the uncertainties been a very important part of the business partnering role. And I think as well, the connection back to our mission and purpose. So I think that's also been a real element of being able to stay focused and ensuring that we're able to continue to deliver on our mission and our purpose. And one of the key things for us at Koga is ensuring that our products and services, are affordable and accessible for all. So the business partners have played a key role in ensuring that the teams were able to focus on that mission, even though, entire global supply chains were under a lot of pressure. Our teams were able to continue to source and place, emphasis on ensuring we could get goods into our community hands, including things such as PPE, which is a very important element of the fight against a global crisis such as what we're experiencing. So I think apparent early on was the ability to play that role in ensuring that everyone stayed on course and that purpose was really communicated well throughout the organisation, and also bringing that bigger picture perspective to our operational teams on informing them on what's happening in the market in our areas of expertise. So I think that was particularly evident in the early part of when the pandemic hit, being able to kind of reassure and also, lend an ear in terms of what was happening within the various departments, as well as value add interactions, and ensuring that change agency was apparent in terms of being able to quickly focus on changing environment and being able to operate successfully in that sense.
What stands out, Lisa, in terms of what you've said there is really that, what is commonly referred to as that cross-unit collaboration between areas, in order to really, and I think you mentioned there purpose too, and really being connected into that main purpose. Everyone understands what the goals is, or what the goals are rather, and how we're moving together as an organisation in terms of the achievement of those goals. That certainly assists with building the resilience on a personal and team level, but also certainly with that change agency that you mentioned, and so critical at a time like this, but at any time. I think often we forget that we're very good at the communication sometimes with employees and with our customers, but we forget that cross-unit collaboration and communication. Thank you.
Really.
Alex, from a recruitment perspective, what have you been seeing in terms of how business partner roles are evolving in the market during this time, and what business partner capabilities are highly valued? And the final part of the question really is, what do you believe are things that would make business partners really stand out in this market in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rita, and hello to everyone who's joined. So I'm going to have a bit of obviously an HR slant to my findings, but still very relevant. So if we're talking about specifically post March or sort of COVID times, it's really just going to be a focus point on particular statements of work, which target specific skills within the industry, usually over a contract term or a short period. So, for example, in an HR sense, you may not have room for a full remit end-to-end HR business partner, which usually involves heavy workload of workplace relations or employee relations. You'd more than likely have a short-term role, which is a workplace relations consultant. So a specific sort of skill set over a short period of time in what you've seen the last few months. But if we're talking more long-term, we've definitely seen a bit of an evolved journey with the business partner. So it's definitely shifted over the last 3 years. Typically an HR business partner, a lot of you will know this, but is very strategic, reports into the board or deals with executives and helps influence and navigate them on the journey. Over the years, it has maybe the impact and the scale of HR has been, it's been much more prevalent in the workforce, but it's leaned more into almost like an advisory based position, which is slightly more reactive, but still very, very critical. So it does provide, while this does provide, a greater reach of partnering than just at the executive and at the board level, it's just a good indication that, the importance of partnering and guidance goes through the entire company, not just at the very senior end. So we've actually seen from our end that, and maybe Lisa and Kate have probably seen this as well, but we've seen a lot of projects. Sorry, I think the volume's a bit down. We've seen a lot of projects over the last 12 months, sort of decentralization projects. So basically that's programs of works that allow the business partners to have a greater sort of partnering and influencing ability and to get more aligned business outcomes with their client groups. So in terms of capabilities that are highly valued, if you were to talk about the market right now in terms of what's in demand, it's more specific skills around return to work, safety, L&D, digital engagement, sort of workplace relations. But in terms of, what are really valued capabilities that we look for and what our clients look for, you'll see, utilization of data and analytics. So being able to use and record data, but also to use that to drive business outcomes and decisions. The strong ability to influence, and having a really good understanding of the industrial relations as there have been change in certain reforms around the working environment. And look, in terms of how a business partner can stand out, I'll break it into two things. There's either the people who are really looking for a role right now in terms of an active candidate market, and just in general, how to be a holistic business partner to stand out, for the rest of your life. If you're engaging the market, you really need to take the time to enhance your profile, not just your CV, but your digital presence. So getting out on LinkedIn, things like this, LinkedIn presence and your networking does make a big part, because you need to have a bigger digital footprint these days, especially with how people recruit. Use agencies and career coaches. I'm not just saying that because I'm both. But it is a really tough time right now, and it's much more competitive. So you really need to stand out from that point of view. So please, you really got to spread it wide in terms of your search. Make use of your connections. While there's a lot of people on the market right now, you can probably tap into a bigger source, a bigger talent pool of people. However, a lot of companies are also quite reluctant to go out to that because it can be quite detrimental based on the sheer volume of people that apply. So use your more organic measures, which is your referrals. I can't tell you how much referrals are massive right now, and people take them seriously. But to stand out as a business partner in general, stay relevant, learn other methods, network, keep an eye on the market and know what's going on, so you're not going to ever be complacent. So you're future-proofing your profile. You really need to know what good is and what the yardstick is, and just really present on how important and relevant you are, but also how bad it is when you're not around.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, that's some great points there, particularly around the digital presence and referrals as well, and the strength of networking, not only during this time, but across everyone's career. There tends to be that sort of drop off in external networking where people are really settled into the organisation that they're working in, and they probably forget that external piece as well. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And also, is the audio okay from mine? Perfect.
All good now, thank you. Kate, you've had parts of your business resorts, for example, that have been severely hit with COVID. However, you've got other parts of RACV that are less impacted. How have you focused the efforts of your BPs, and how have your internal customer needs changed during this time?
Yeah, and I think in terms of focusing our efforts, you're right. We have got such a diverse product and service portfolio at RACV. The one thing that we do in common is that across the whole organisation, we're a purpose-driven organisation. And I think Lisa touched on this a little earlier. At times like this, where there's change and uncertainty, anchoring back to that purpose that you have as an organisation really draws people together. You know, I know for myself as a leader, I see my role as supporting the team that I have, and I'm fortunate that we've got a great business partnering team, and trusting them and giving them the autonomy to identify what's needed in their unique business unit. And we do need to have a lot of resilience, because some days I feel like we're absolutely nailing it, and there are definitely other days where I finish pretty weary, and sometimes I think we're failing our way to success in other ways as well. But where our operations are really impacted is at the moment in our resort space that you mentioned, in our retail space, and the BPs are really changing focus to support the business in that time by looking at probably a core range of 5 things. So reliance on support for things like workforce planning and restructures. For anyone who's job keeping or the JobKeeper program, you would know that it's an absolutely enormous project to be managing. And for some reason, Dan Andrews likes to put HR and businesses on the spot on a Sunday afternoon by announcing new restrictions. So there's certainly been a lot of Sunday afternoon meetings with big teams where we think, well, how are we going to operationalise these stand downs or stand ups? There's also a really human side of this story as well. Our people in the resort business are so passionate about what they do, and after we restarted after hibernating resorts, they were so proud to be coming back, and they had their new training of what did the new normal look like for them. So it was just gutting for the business to then for them to be going home again. And part of this for a business partner is about looking at that human connection and understanding the impact that this has, not only on our leaders, because they care really deeply about the people that are working in our team. How do they deliver that news, and what can we do to support the people that aren't necessarily at work, to keep their resilience up, to keep their morale up, even though they're not necessarily connected to the workplace. And starting to look at wellbeing initiatives, not just for those people that aren't working, but we're noticing that there's a real feeling of almost survivor guilt with people that are still in the workplace at the moment, that are really feeling for other people that are more impacted. So I don't think we can underestimate the impact that looking at those wellbeing initiatives and making sure that leaders are supported to know it is okay for them to reach out for help. But what are we doing proactively as an organisation to support people? Because we really value our people, and we need them to come back to work, whether it's whether it's sooner or later. We hope it's sooner. The other thing that I would say that business partners are really heavily involved in the retail and hotel space is looking at COVID recovery modelling. So really closely with our EGMs and our finance partners to look at, firstly, from a supply or a demand stage. And at the moment in our businesses, we're really restricted more from a supply perspective. So what are the government restrictions saying we can do? And that's impacting on our revenue. But there's also a realisation in those business areas and across our ACB that at some stage that's going to shift in the longer term to more what consumer demand is and member demand is, and what are their buying behaviours potentially going to change with this situation. So looking at how workforce composition and capability might need to change to keep the organisation financially resilient is really critical. So a lot of modelling going on, and also looking at how we can be creative and flexible to keep as many people as we can engaged in the business. And one of the things that I'm really proud of that I think we've done is be good connectors with different teams. So for example, you know, we do a lot of work in community outreach in RACV, and we've got a group of people in our hotels division that don't have any work to do at the moment because we're not welcoming guests, but they've been redeployed to other areas of the business now, and they're delivering through our emergency goods assistant, helping to provide meals for vulnerable people in the community. So I think it's about thinking about those things where you can see there's a need somewhere else in the business and flexing and trying to use the great skills we have for people rather than necessarily hibernating them.
Kate, and I think that's a really good point around the well-being of employees as well. And Lisa, you touched on this as well, that just because an organisation might be performing quite well during this time, it doesn't mean that individuals, employees are actually struggling to adapt with what's happening in the broader context. And I think you made the point around, you know, being good connectors as well. Interested to hear from the rest of the panel as well, if there's anything from a well-being perspective in terms of their organisations. But for us, certainly what we're seeing too is that conscious effort to align your wellbeing programs with the way that you communicate with your employees, so that the continuous listening feedback during this time is actually quite critical. And again, organisation might be doing well, but we just don't know the circumstances at home for some of the employees. They could have a partner who's lost a job, and or just struggling to even from a homeschooling perspective, which we know was across Australia and you know, across the globe as well. That was quite difficult for students as well. So there's all these little pressure points that standing from a distance, you know, can make it really difficult. So I'm not sure if anyone has any sort of further thoughts around that.
Yeah, George, I think you know, as you said, the health and wellness elements critical, and we've got a number of virtual events. So we have a number of health and wellness initiatives that we run throughout the year, and those haven't stopped, but they're just done in a transition to a virtual setting now. So virtual yoga and also a virtual boot camp is a great way to connect our teams from home and also across various departments. So bringing the teams together in that way has been really helpful.
Thank you, Lisa. And we've just got a participant who's just forwarded through a question as well. And again, opening up the floor here as well. What wellbeing and resilience initiatives have you found successful? I might just kick off on that one there. What we've certainly seen is the organisations that take a holistic approach to their wellbeing and resilience initiatives. So when we're talking about a holistic approach to wellbeing, it's about social wellbeing, financial wellbeing, mental wellbeing, physical wellbeing. When you have those four elements working together in a holistic way and communicated actively, you tend to get a better result in terms of individuals within an organisation being able to take up some of that advice. But it's also, I think the second part to that is also about listening to employees, and rather taking a scattergun approach to wellbeing initiatives. Listen to your employees, know your clients, and be able to look at different segments of your employee base and being able to identify wellbeing initiatives that might be best fit for them. So I think the whole focus around best fit's quite important.
George, I would sort of echo those comments. I think there's no one single solution that's going to work. We have to look at it holistically. For RACV, we look at it from a range of different areas. And the first one, I think, is being financial. And before JobKeeper came in, we looked at ways we could support our employees financially above what was necessarily required, because we felt that that was the right thing to do. And if people are worried about paying bills in the short term, then effectively they're frozen in that state of fear. And we wanted to give our people a little bit of space and knowing that we would be there behind them to support. And I think it's been a godsend to have the JobKeeper come in around that. And in terms of the wellbeing and other areas, we've got some really great people from right across the business in different functions in an operational roles that are filtering in information to a wellbeing steer code team that are just looking at each week, what are the different things that we can do, which initiatives are landing well and resonating with people. But often the best ideas, I feel, they're generated from employees themselves, feeling comfortable to come and say, this is what I want, or here's what I would benefit from.
That's a good point, Kate. And I guess that, again, that active listening loop with employees, and particularly as needs change quite quickly. With every government announcement, there seems to be a different need that needs to be addressed as well, even from a communication standpoint. Jordan, your clients are diverse with varied needs. Is there a defining moment when your team of IT business partners were called upon to solve a complex business issue? And during this time, how have you developed your team as a result of this?
That's a good question. When you ask an IT person about a defining moment, you're probably going to get a boring response. But in terms of a defining moment for us was a part of our business, we specialize a lot in cloud hosted hosting solutions. And we recently had a project where we needed to decommission a data center and relocate just over 100 servers, and also set up a failover site. So, and at the same time, maintain 99.99% uptime. So it was a pretty straightforward project. So we needed to create a detailed plan, and which we did. And part of that involved looking at a skills matrix, and we knew we had gaps within the team, but we just needed to know where they were. So there was a lot of effort that went into understanding our people, where those gaps were, and who gets it, wants it, and what sort of capacity did we have to deliver on this, and that allowed us to build a strong a gap analysis and tier our people's skill sets in terms of where they were today, and then also with that create defined development plans that they can work on moving forward. And that helped a lot with, one, their existing staff development, but also our recruitment strategy of who we need to recruit, and making sure we're recruiting the right people for the right seat. So often, there might be an ad that goes out, and we weren't always recruiting the right people, and that impacted what we're delivering to our partners. And the result was that we were definitely able to deliver on the project well, but more importantly, moving forward, it's allowed us to be really clear as a business on where we were and where we're going in terms of our people and the skill sets, and ensuring that we're able to deliver to the expectations of our clients.
Jordan, that's a really a structured and practical way of approaching it. What's been some of the response from the business partners when you're approaching this in such a systematic way, where for me, it looks like that not only are you trying to balance the needs of the business, current needs, but also emerging needs, but also being able to bring employees along for that ride as well, and making sure that you develop them. So what's been some of the feedback that you've seen?
Yeah, good. And I mean, especially from a leadership team, it's probably really aligned the leadership team, understanding, as a business, taking a step back and really understanding where we sat, where 6 to 9 months ago, we thought we knew exactly where we were at, but now we definitely know where we're at. And we actually, when we review that regularly, so it was probably about a couple of hours ago today, we did that analysis again. So we do it regularly, and we're consistently working on that, and that's helped us really understand where we're at. And we've seen, people that have come along and developed significantly, and seeing a real shift in the experiences that our clients are having, as well as a result of that strategy that we implemented, and getting really good feedback.
I guess at the end of the day, the shift in the customer experience is important. So that's great. Thank you. Alex, it's a time for renewal, and what business capabilities do you see increasing in importance in the next 12 to 18 months? And what advice, and I think we touched on this briefly earlier, what advice do you have for BPs building their external personal brand?
Yeah, sure. I might be repeating myself a little bit, but we've covered it a little bit before, but diversity and inclusion, well-being, that's always going to be a strong suit. Data analytics, that's the main one, using the data for operational but also strategic outcomes. The ability to actually influence as a trusted advisor. ER, from a human resource perspective, ER and IR is just huge, especially after all some of the changes, and the ability to manage a high-performing team remotely, change management, and a strong suit on sort of leadership capability, how you can sort of uplift it, especially when everything's so dispersed at this time. In terms of, you know, how do you build the brand? You know, you can create your own brand. That's pretty easy to say, but you still have to be I think you still have to be quite authentic and genuine about it. So you do need to define yourself firstly. So, you know your strengths, know your style, and then build on that. Have a great, I said it before as well, have a great digital presence. You really need to assert yourself out there in a wider scale of things. Not just if you're looking for a role, just in general, because a lot of the people who, would sort of assert themselves or their dominance walking around the office and doing a few laps and nudging shoulders and whatever, you can't do that anymore. So you have to be a little bit more pragmatic with your client groups to get yourself out there. I'll say it again, network. Really get yourself out there. You need to know where the bar is, because ask any sportsman, ask any chess player, you're only as good as the opponent you face. And I think we've all been in that time where we maybe are comparing themselves to some of the other people in the business that might be a little bit more junior, and you get a little bit complacent and you kind of think, you know what, I'm pretty good at what I do. And it's not until you go to a networking group and you see someone who's kind of at a level as you are, but they're doing X, Y, and Z more, you start to think, okay, I think I've realized that I've just been quite complacent over the last few years. So you really want to future-proof your brand and be that subject matter expert. And I always just tell people it's easy to build a brand and it's very easy for it to crumble. Just always keep in mind that no matter what market you're in and how big you think it is, it's actually a lot smaller than you think. And everyone knows everyone to some degree. So just treat that carefully and always have your best hat on, okay? Because it can come back to haunt you. Not personally, but I've known some people that have done that the wrong way, and it's not good. So you can't hide this day.
Well, Alex, just on that final point about, just mind your manners. I guess what really jumps out for me is the idea of trust. And there's a great old quote: "Trust arrives on foot but leaves on horseback." And I guess in terms of building your own external brand, as well as internal brand, that ability to build trust and maintain it as well. So thank you for that.
And also, if you are going to be going out there and networking and everything and seeing some of these amazing people, still trust in yourself and believe in your own ability, because some people will, when you're hyper connected, you do have, what's called sort of comparative struggle. So you sort of look at other people and you compare it to yourself, but just always remember, the saying that I always follow is, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So still someone who may have perceived as a limited capability still has a lot to give to other people. So just trust yourself as well.
Yeah, it's so true, particularly when, we're looking at so many individuals now in between jobs. It's really easy when you have that professional network breakdown in terms of just individuals that you're typically around and draw strength from. Then all of a sudden there's the unemployment, and then you've got all these other issues in the broader community as well. It is really looking to seek and find that strength internally as well, to be able to just get up the next day and jump on a phone call, connect with someone that maybe you haven't spoken to in a few years, but you've worked with in the past, and you know that if they were to get your phone call, they would not be saying, no, I'm busy. So yeah, definitely LinkedIn is fantastic for that, where even if you make a point during this time where you just once a week, just send a note to someone that you may have worked with in the past and just say, hey, I was thinking of you, how are you going? And just checking in to see how they're going, and open up a conversation. Firstly, from a position of genuine care, but secondly, it's the networking as well. So thank you, Alex. Lisa, on the flip side, what advice do you have for BPs to assist them in building their internal personal brand with key stakeholders? And what advice do you have for leaders to help their BPs achieve this?
Sure. Look, thanks for the question, George. And I think Alex touched on a lot of the key elements. And I think, the first one I'd start with is build purpose and trust. I think, becoming a trusted advisor is something, as BPs, we all aspire to be. And I think we want to be the people that the business turns to for support and advice. So the key thing, I think, is to start within your own BP team to really define that purpose. And also then once you've defined that purpose, to really communicate that with your stakeholder group. So building that up front and then having that contracting is really key. Looking at those agreed ways of working and establishing that communication with your client groups is really critical, I think, as an upfront piece of work. And it also can be something that you constantly go back to. So it's constantly looking at that recontracting. And as we've seen through the pandemic, making sure that the communication forums you set up are able to be sustainable as well, because just because we're not in the same office, I think it's important that we remain front of mind and also continue that communication with the stakeholders and within our own teams. And the second bit of advice would be around listening and really being an observer. So get to know your client groups well. I mean, every department certainly has different needs, and as we touched on earlier, can operate quite differently. So getting to know their operating rhythm, and also making sure that you have a bit of a playbook when it comes to your stakeholder group. So something I've found useful over time and years of business partnering is create a stakeholder map and get to know, what your leadership as well as the team in those various departments, the way they like to be engaged, what are their key needs. And a lot of that learning comes through observation. So ensuring that you're getting along to their meetings and seeing things through yourself, understanding the key priorities and what are the goals within the team, as well as helping them define those goals. So that really becomes a key element to high performing teams when we look at team dynamics, as that is constantly changing, as we know. And it's important that we approach business partnering that way. So not just relying on our leaders to tell us what's going on, but to actually see that for yourself, and to also ensure that you've got your finger on the pulse, and that as a business partner you're constantly seen as part of that team essentially, and helping to also at times hold up a mirror to them and help them see things that perhaps they wouldn't have seen without your perspective. So that's a key piece of advice. I think the third bit of advice would be around having courage and giving meaningful feedback. I think, as a BP, at times we need to call things out and really ensure that we're giving those insights and perspective to the team. So it's not always easy. I mean, if we can see that there's a collision course ahead, often, as BPs, it's important for us to be able to call that out and to give honest feedback to the team, to the leaders that we're engaging, and have that courage to do so, because I think, it's a disservice to hold on to very important feedback and not provide that to the business. I think that's a key element that I've learnt over the years, and I think a very important one. And I think as well, another key element is having empathy and ensuring that you are listening and understanding and knowing what's going on in the business, and not always trying to build or push an agenda of a business partnering function. I think that's a common trap where sometimes business partnering functions can almost build an industry themselves on pushing out an agenda, as opposed to perhaps looking and listening first and then designing a fit for purpose, department specific, kind of playbook, and ensuring that fits in with the cadence and with the needs of that department. That's going to get a much better result, and get a lot more traction essentially with your group. So I think that would be the key elements that I would share for business partners. And then for leaders, I think my advice for leaders in terms of engaging with business partners is, really invite your business partners in and ensure that you open up to them and be really honest and vulnerable with them. And likewise, as business partners, ensure that there is that open communication, have that sort of allow your business partners to have that back of house view, because they are there to support you. And I think the more you open up to them, they're able to support you in a more meaningful way. So you want to ensure that you're being really open, as I said, and that you're viewing your business partners as there to strategically support you in achieving your goals, not being the handbrake or the blocker, as part of that partnering. So I think it's really important that leaders are utilising business partners to be able to drive, those business outcomes, and to be able to have that ongoing communication would certainly allow that diversity of thought as well into the team through the business partnering function. So that would be my advice for leaders and BPs.
And Lisa, a lot of the great suggestions that you've made there as well really comes back to just having that level of self-awareness as well. So being really conscious of how your behaviour impacts the individuals around you, but also how your behaviours impact the broader brand of your team as well. I think you mentioned in terms of empathy and also active listening, but also constructive and timely feedback as well. Certainly just those three elements there that you pointed out there, it is critical to make sure that there's that degree of accountability as well across not only within a team but across the business as well. So thank you.
Thanks, George.
We've just got a couple questions, and again I might to the panel. There's a couple of questions here. Sonali, thank you. Great question. What advice would you give a fresh graduate in HR in terms of next steps towards becoming a BP?
I'm happy to answer that one. I think it's a great question. One of the ways that I think I've grown in my career is having somebody that I'm working for who's an advocate for me and will see the value in me and will give me the space to fail and succeed as well. So I think it's more important than the actual job you're doing to find someone you think is a great leader that you can learn from and who will invest in you and really genuinely show you that they want to help you succeed in your career goals. And I'm not convinced that it matters necessarily what the job title is or where the company is, but the leader that you work for, if you find someone that really resonates with you and you feel that they want you to succeed as much as you want to succeed, those leaders are gold, and they're the people that are going to help you succeed and achieve what you want in your career.
Kate, I've got just reflecting on your response there as well. Half the time there's advocacy in the workplace for your own development needs, but you're not aware of it. And it's only over a period of time that you think, hey, Peter had my back or Jenny had my back. And I think that's probably, for me, in terms of looking at my career, is that pay it forward becomes a lot more powerful because you're realising, well, It's time to pay it forward, and rather than calling out the fact that I'm supporting someone, just do the things behind the scenes that may not be seen at all from that individual, and know that there's going to be an impact there as well on these individuals around their development as well. And we do have one final question, quick response for this from the panel. What advice would you give a BP wanting to start their data analytics journey?
There's a few things, I guess. Probably, picking a language and sticking with it, but looking to definitely volunteer and gaining experience. But a lot of what you heard before around from Alex in terms of market yourself. Definitely things like LinkedIn, but even having a GitHub account and making sure you're updating it regularly, and don't be afraid to promote your skills. You don't know who might come across it, and it's just a matter of keeping yourself, keeping your knowledge up to speed. It's such an ever evolving space. So there are a couple of things that you could definitely be focusing on, and looking at perhaps peer groups to join as well is another good thing that that you could do as well. So there are probably 2 or 3 different things I would be looking to do.
And just to that, Jordan, if you are working at the moment, try and get yourself around some of the other departments. So analytics is quite large in like workforce planning. See what you can sort of sponge off from them, and they can even give you some direction, because there are also short courses you can take that give you, remote sort of working options across the year, but it gives you a great way of interpreting data and how you sort of put it into a business decision. But if you do have the good grace of working right now, go into your other departments are a little bit more data number friendly, because they can give you a little bit more sort of directions, maybe just a bit of a base step to go in that right direction too. But also really good points to Jordan as well.
Yeah, I'd just add to that. I think the data analytics space is really, taken off, and I think for all business partners, it's an important element of all roles. Notwithstanding which department you're from, I think that there are a lot of those online courses. There's a lot of meetups as well, as the team touched on. So research that space. And look at the organisations. If you're working within one, what are the valuable systems and data visualisation tools that the organisation are currently using, but also likewise if you are looking across at other organisations, know what they're using as a tool also, and perhaps do some research around the data analytics space that you wish to get into if you are job hunting.
Thank you, Lisa. Look, some simple and pragmatic insights from the panel. And it's a shame we cannot see the audience today, because I know there'd be a round of applause for the panel, so thank you. Okay, so home stretch. Now, whilst the business partner term emerged in HR, it has evolved over the last couple of decades, and now we find it across most disciplines. So what's driven this? Our external world, well, it's disruptive and uncertain, and the evolution of business partnering has been a consistent topic of conversation in our virtual business partnering program, and we're certainly finding emerging insights in the research Rita and I are undertaking for our book as well. Now, the expectations of the business partner, they've evolved significantly, and with these heightened expectations, it comes the need to refresh and upskill, and we've heard a lot of that in the conversation today as well. And again, it's the only way to keep up with business demands. However, I think we do need to start blurring the line across disciplines. We spoke about community earlier. Good stuff happens when we can get your fellow HR, finance, procurement, IT business partners get in the same room and start working towards a common goal. Start sharing information. Start sharing KPIs. You might be surprised to find that you're all working towards a common goal. And we know this cross-discipline collaboration works, and we've seen it play out in our program and in our e-forums. And Rita and I, we're committed to finding this common language to bring BPs together and start moving the dial as well. And we know from the registrations from today as well, the session reflects the diversity of disciplines that have committed their time to join us today. So what I will do is just leave you with just a couple of key insights that have really jumped out for me. And some of the themes, network, I think is an important one there, which came out in a lot of the conversations. That sense of community as well. So not only looking within team, but looking across team and actually making a concerted effort. And as I mentioned, you know, it doesn't take much to find out who is, if you're in HR, who is the finance business partner that is supporting the same business as you. If you haven't reached out to them, you probably should. And again, that sense of internal community is quite important. And then finally, Jordan right up front spoke about the importance of commercial acumen as well. There's been a lot around behavioural attributes through the conversation today, but commercial acumen tends to be that sort of mystical figure in the distance around what that is. And the way I define commercial acumen, it's twofold. Know your business model, be very clear about the business activities across your business, the client segments that you touch, the way you connect with them, the channels that you use to connect with them, and also the external partners that enable your business as well. There's a bit more to that around business, the business model, but the second part to that as well is know the world around you. So know the macro environment that you operate in. I think a combination of bringing the outside in and bringing the inside out will give you a really good sense of the kind of skills that you need to build over time to develop your commercial acumen. Just to finish up, we've got a minute to go. So we will be forwarding you all a white paper on this topic that shares some of our emerging research. To our panelists today, thank you for committing your time, sharing your expertise and stories. Alex, Kate, Lisa and Jordan, I'm sure everyone on this webinar today would have picked up on this, but you're all such wonderful people, and Rita and I really appreciate your time today. And thank you to our regular and our new participants. We know how difficult it is at present with all this uncertainty. On behalf of Rita and I, we trust you got value from this discussion. Feel free to connect with us. Happy to hear your thoughts on today's topic. And or if you wish to join one of our free e-forums, which is a small group, 7 to 8 leaders. It's highly interactive. We focus on a specific topic every fortnight, and we just, again, network. And it is a free e-forum there, and we get a lot of value out of that. And finally, thanks again. Stay tuned for our next webinar in the evolution of a BP series, and keep safe, take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.